The Speedrun podcast is a podcast project started in January of 2020. The primary goal of the podcast is to give insights to different games and categories involving speedrunning through interviewing different speedrunners. The secondary goal is to promote the speedrunners out there so more people can enjoy their content and hopefully try out speedrunning for themselves. We'll also dive into other subjects regarding speedrunning, such as mental health within and outside the speedrun itself and how it can affect the runner. Tools needed for different runs and games. The different attitudes, restrictions, and open-mindedness of different speedrunning communities. But before we start the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the first guest of episode number 1 of the Speedrunner podcast. Xuio007 is a 28-year-old streamer from the good old United Kingdom. He's been playing video games since he was 5 years old, and to him it's more of a passion than a hobby. Xuio is mostly known for his Crash Bandicoot speedruns and various Let's Plays on Twitch.tv. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing how he got into speedrunning and why he enjoys it. The ups and downs of speedrunning and mental health and how it can affect you in a positive and a negative way, as well as the different categories and the true categories of different games, as well as comparing speedrunning to sports and esports. Now, I won't keep you guys waiting any longer. Let's get on with the podcast. Alright everybody, welcome to the Speedrunners podcast, the very first episode number 1. We are here today with Xuio. Welcome Xuio, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you for inviting me to be your first guest.
Well, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
So, let's just dive into the first questions. How has your day been?
My day's been pretty good, apart from the wind and the rain that keeps knocking me offline, as probably everyone knows by now. Which is a massive problem when you're a streamer, when knowing the wind and the rain can affect what you're doing a lot.
Oh, you mean like it can cut out your internet and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Ooh, yeah, that's a rough one there. But speaking of things that can get ruined by weather, which can also be called RNG. Oh, nice segue. Not really. How did you get into speedrunning?
That's a good question because when I was basically 7, 8 years old, I used to play Crash Bandicoot 1 religiously, almost every day for years and years. And pretty much when I was 9, 10 years old, I thought, usually I would always play a game, but never really gave much thought of how fast I can complete it. So one day I literally just sat down by my, on the settee, grabbed the actual controller, and I got I guess an hourglass, because actually my parents had an hourglass that I could use. So basically what I would do is that I would basically use the hourglass from start to finish, and then if I actually was still going over, I would turn it over again and then try to figure out how much time was actually in there. Obviously when I was 10 years old, it didn't really work as an accurate time measurement, but usually I got through the game 2.5 hours. So basically it was one full rotation, another full rotation, and then halfway through the third one, it's I'm done. So about 2.5 hours, give or take. So I was 12 and actually got a proper timer. I was okay, I actually finished Crash Bandicoot 1 in an hour and 40. So basically that's what was my first take of speedrunning, but I never really took much thought of it until I first joined Twitch, when people wait, this is an actual thing? So basically I started watching people doing Crash Bandicoot runs and other bits and pieces. I was oh, this actually is a real popular thing. And that's basically where it all started for me.
Oh, really? So how did you come up with the idea of using an hourglass instead of looking at your watch or just a timer?
Well, when I was really about 7 or 8 years old, my parents didn't really have a real accurate way of really measuring the time, apart from a clock in the kitchen. So I didn't really have a phone that had a timer or any other way to really properly record time. So I had to use what I had, and that's the only thing I could really think of. I never really thought about it much past just using that. I was thinking, it's not going to really make much of a difference. It's just more of an average. Until I basically had a phone which I could probably use for a timer. And that's where I could actually start to actually get a rough estimation of my time instead of going from estimates. I just didn't really have the means of actually be able to record a proper time.
That's really interesting though. I wonder how the speedrunning community in general would react if someone was to use an hourglass instead of an on-screen timer.
I think they would get denied straight away, I think.
Really? You think they deny it?
I think so, because... Well, actually, I don't really know, because has anyone even tried to do an hourglass timer?
Because, I mean, it kind of depends on the game, I would say. If it's something something like Tetris or whatever. I'm not really sure. But something that requires you to have almost like a second or decimal value of your time. Obviously, an hourglass is not going to work. But if it's like one of those ridiculous categories like Final Fantasy X, Nemesis percent, no one's really gonna bat too much of an eye. I don't think that's just my personal opinion. It would be really interesting to see someone use an hourglass as a timer, because most speedruns on the speedrun.com page, it just specifies that you have to show an on-screen timer, and technically an hourglass is a form of time measurement, and if you show it in your webcam, it is on screen. So really it's kind of diffused there, but obviously if you're going for like a competitive time and world record, I think it's gonna be denied pretty quickly.
I think if you're doing it just for the fun of it, just as like a meme or just like as a joke, I think you could probably get away with it. As long as you're not actually going to actually be submitting it as an actual official time, I think people would be very amused by that. Because nowadays you can get actually hourglasses with like the little shutter in the middle, so literally when you actually need to stop it, you can actually stop it right there. So you can try and roughly estimate how much sound is actually in both of the parts. So you can go, it's, for example, it's like 13 hours and 31 minutes, for example. Got like these little shutter things you can actually use, like slide in and out, so you can actually stop the timer when you need to.
That's actually really cool. That's really cool. I mean, I guess there is some math involved. Like if you're skilled at maths, which I'm not, then you could probably calculate an exact amount of time if you had a certain construction of hourglass. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's a viable measurement when it comes to speedrunning, at least.
Oh yeah. But when I was younger, it's literally really all I had, because we actually had like an hourglass. Because when I was actually at school, I actually was given one by the actual teacher, so I used that. I mean, technically in hindsight, I probably could have used like my mum's like alarm clock, but I don't think she would appreciate the clock being missing downstairs when she had to get up for work in the morning. I don't think she would have appreciated that. And the only other watch was my dad's watch. We had on him at all times, so the only thing I really had was the hourglass.
You just have to have your dad with you whenever you were speedrunning.
Yes,
just sat
beside me.
Just show his watch on the stream camera.
Yeah, that would do it. I'm pretty sure that would do it. But no, I only had like an hourglass as like my first real way of actually being able to measure time until I was old enough to get like a phone with like a proper like timer.
Yeah. So basically, once you joined Twitch, you started figuring out that people weren't only playing games there, they were streaming them in a speedrunning sense competitively on that platform. What was your reaction? Like, what did you want to do?
Well, when I first saw it, because like usually while I was doing speedruns, I didn't really know what a speedrun was actually defined as when I was younger. It was just something that, how fast can I complete this game? I was thinking, it's just how fast can I complete the game from start to finish. Like, for example, if I do it like example called Crash 1, I'll just go from Insanity Beach to Cortex without getting any of the gems or doing every gem along the way. I was like, I did it in like an hour and 40. I didn't actually consider it to be like a speedrun per se. It was more just, I completed in that amount of time and I'm actually proud of myself. But no, when I first joined Twitch, it was like, wait, someone's speedrunning? This seems familiar what I used to do. And I was watching people, and people were like, commentating saying like, that was really impressive seeing. That was like watching this Crash 1 runner and watching him like do what I was thinking, how's that even possible? I mean, I could only do it in like an hour and 40. This guy did it in like 42 minutes. And that was really when I was like, right, okay, I see. So people can get better and actually do this as like an actual thing competitively, and just, or maybe not even competitively, just doing it as a hobby, just trying to see if they can get their game down as low as possible. And I was just blown away by it.
Yeah, that's kind of my initial reaction when I first saw a speedrun, was like, wait, what? This is a thing? You can skip parts? What? But what do you remember? What the first? Maybe you remember the Crash Bandicoot was the first game you saw, but do you remember who the first streamer of a speedrun was?
That's going to be a hard question to answer. I got to try and see if I can go back through my memory. Because I remember when I first joined Twitch, I joined a couple of channels. I was like just trying to get my footing on Twitch, trying to figure out all the communities, all the different, like, all the games that you can actually watch. Because I was still, like, trying to look up all my favourite games that I used to play, like Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy 9, 8, 7, like Ape Escape, the Tasmanian Is it Tasmanian Tiger? The one where you run around with a boomerang and stuff.
I think it
and
is.
loads of other games.
I want to say Tasmanian Devil, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, I don't want to embarrass myself, but I think it's tied to Tasmanian Tiger. I'll have to look at after the actual podcast. But no, I think the first person I watched doing a speedrun, I think, was W. Shand, I think it was. He was doing Resident Evil 4, if I actually remember. Because I was just looking for new people when that came up on my actual recommended list years and years ago, like back in 2015. And I was watching him trying to go through. I don't really know much about from Resident Evil 4, but I thought, what's this Resident Evil 4 speedrun? And I was just captivated in watching him just running through everything, like skipping all the enemies. Like, oh, okay. Because usually, for me, I never back away from a challenge. I was like watching a guy literally skip everything. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I think it was W. Shan that actually was the first speedrun I actually watched, and I was like, wow, okay, this is actually something incredibly impressive.
All right, okay. So moving on to other parts of just not only speedrunning, but streaming in general, I suppose. But mostly focus on the speedrunning aspect there. What is your goal with speedrunning? Is there something that you want to achieve, or is it just a way to pass the time because you enjoy it? Or could you dive into that a little bit?
I guess the reason why I speedrun was when I first started, I want to try. I wasn't really competitive. It was just like, how well can I put my skills to the test to try and get my timer down further and further. I mean, I won't actually lie about it. I actually got to a point when I was speedrunning where I actually got so crushed by trying to get better that actually just completely wore me out. Like trying to do Crash Bandicoot 1 on the Insane Trilogy was probably my best example. Where I was trying to play so well and trying to get better that I was like putting too much pressure on myself and just burnt myself out. But ever since then, I've been trying to like play the games. Like I'm trying to go as fast as I can, but try and do it somewhat casually more than like trying to get a competitive time. Because I can't force myself through to push. I mean, it sounds like a really bad example of being a speedrunner, like trying to put your skills to the test and try and prove yourself how well you can play a game. But I got to a point where I was just feeling burnt out from trying to push and push and push. So I'm more about it now. I'm just trying to actually play for fun and try to be entertaining while trying to do as best I can. And hopefully I can get PB that way than just trying to like sit down. I mean, I know you're supposed to like put yourself, dedicate yourself to getting a better time. But I think for me, that's not really the best way for me to actually speedrun. Some people can do it that way and be competitive, and others can't. I don't think I can really do it competitively, but I'd love to speedrun in a casual sense. So that's really a term you can really use for speedrunning.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of brings me into my next question there as well, because there's a lot of games, there's a lot of speedrunners, and some people they do runs for fun. They want to challenge themselves. They want a reason to play a game again. And other people, they want to be the best. They want to be top 10, top 5, top 3. They want to be number 1. How do you think that personal pressure and possibly even community pressure affects a streamer and a speedrunner when it comes to getting that number 1 spot?
That's actually a really good question, because that ties back to my last one we had, was because there was a few people in the Crash 1 NST community that wanted me to become top 3. They thought if I put enough time into it and enough dedication that I could reach top 3, and that was how I felt burnt out trying to do Crash 1. Every morning I'd try and wake up and I thought, I've got to try and do Crash 1 again today. And I was going to get to a point where I was not feeling like generally depressed, but I was like just fearing having to like wake up and get ready to try and get things up for a Crash 1 run and try and do all the actual training and just try and put in the time to try and learn all these skips and trying to get consistent, because it's not overly too difficult, but I can't, with my eyesight being how it is, when I'm usually playing Crash 1, it's more about just muscle memory more than like seeing it and then executing. It's more of a muscle memory. I suppose I've got to try and do even more training than most people would have to try and do. And I think that's what really got to me, was the pressure of the expectation from a few people in the community of having to be number 3, number 5, or maybe even trying to push for number 2, regardless of even being number 1. I think that's can be a huge deterrent for trying to do speedrunning. Some people can do it under pressure, some people can't, but for me personally, I can't do that. And I tried to do that, and it backfired badly. Not at the people itself, but my own, I guess, emotional stability, or just like mental stability of trying to stay happy and trying to grind out the game.
Yeah. So how you kind of mentioned it a little bit there, but you mentioned that I have to get up and do this thing. Like at that period in your life, how badly did you want to do it, or did you do it, do the practice and the runs because the community wanted you to do it and get because they believed in you, or did you personally want it? Like what? Let me rephrase it a little bit. At what point did you feel like this is not worth doing anymore? I'm not doing it for me. If it even got to that point.
It pretty much got to that point when I was got to top 8 in Crash 1 with my 46:40. I came back after a month away from it. I actually got a 25-second PB on my first day back. And then someone in the community was like, if you could do that on your first day back, if you put in some real work, you could easily get top 5, even top 3. That was their expectation of being top 3 in the world. And it got to a point where I'd wake up, I'd try and do the run, and I was getting 46:50, 46:55, 56:50, repeatedly getting 46:45s and being a couple seconds away from my PB. And I just try to wake up, try to do practice, and during every single run, I would just fail it, and then I would fail again, and fail again, and fail again. And I was just getting to a point where I was just I want to try and get better. I want to try and see if I can get to that top 3 rank, but it's costing me. It's bearing on my actual being. I'm trying to actually get to that point. I just can't break through that barrier, no matter how hard I try. And I just got to a point where I literally just hit the wall. It's I can't anymore. I just can't fulfill the actual the requests that people say that I can do. I just couldn't push myself over that barrier. Some people can. I just wasn't able to break through it, and that's what got to a point where I was I can't do it anymore.
So once you reached that point, what was the next step for you? Was it taking a break? Did you switch to another game to speedrun? Did you play more casual? Or what was your solution to getting your mental game back, so to speak?
I basically took a good 3 months off from Crash period. I couldn't do it anymore, so I went back to just doing casual games on my stream. Just playing Fallout or just anything people gifted me. I just went back from my back catalogue and just played really casual games. I want to try and get back into Crash 1 soon and see if I can get maybe back in the top 10 at least, because I've gone down now from 8th down to 13th now. So I might try and do a return at some point soon. It's just trying to cram in the actual practice and try and get my motivation back and try and get into Crash 1, because I've done a lot of Crash 2 and Crash 3 since then, but I think because I tried so hard in Crash 1, I burnt myself out, and just trying to think about trying to get back into it competitively is just... I have to be careful with it. I don't want to go back to that stage again where I hit a wall and I just stop completely. I'd rather just play it for fun and try and get a PB than just cram in as much time as possible and try and get all the skips down and try and get to top 8, top 5, top 3. I think that's going to be a better thing for me overall. I recommend the same for anyone. If you feel like you can't go anymore, take a break from it and think, do you want to actually push past that point and actually get into a new PB, or just play it for fun and play it for longevity even if you won't get to a high rank?
That's some solid advice right there. But you mentioned it was only Crash 1 there. You still played Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3. In what way does the mentality of the speedrun of Crash 2 and 3 differ from Crash 1? I mean, if you got burnt out, if you want to use those words, from Crash Bandicoot 1, wouldn't it have the same effect of you running Crash 2 or Crash 3?
No, not for me, because I'm nowhere near as good as Crash 2. Because when I was younger, I used to play Crash 1 a lot. I played Crash 2 quite a bit, but not near as much as 1. And 3, I didn't play that much really at all, apart from just playing it really for the first time at home, and that was really it. My love was the original game when I first played. Because Crash 1 was the first game I actually ever played, in period. I mean, I saw other games before that being played when I was at, primary school, when they had, this, SNES, where people were playing Zelda 1, the original Zelda. I can't remember, what's the name of the original first Zelda game?
Isn't it just called The Legend of Zelda, I think?
That might actually even be it, I think. That's the original Legend of Zelda. I saw that being played there. I didn't actually play it, I just saw it. And then just one day, about a couple of months later, my dad actually bought me for my birthday, my 6th birthday, a PS1, with Crash Bandicoot 1 and the original Destruction Derby. And I played Destruction Derby for a little while, but when I played Crash 1, I was just fixated on that game. I don't know why it was. Maybe it was just my childhood imagination, but I was just fixated on playing Crash 1 so much. So when it came to like speedrunning Crash 2 and Crash 3, I'm not so overly fussed on getting a really good time for Crash 2 and Crash 3. They're more of casual speedruns, if I can even say that. Sorry if anyone hates that term.
Alright, so it's more there's more of an emotional and nostalgic connection to Crash 1 than 2 and 3.
Yes.
Okay, then I understand.
So for me, it's easier to speedrun Crash 2 and Crash 3 without having to really care about getting a really good time. I mean, I still don't want to, like, not try at all to get a good time, but I'm not so fussed if I actually fail at 2 and 3 compared to... Because my original thought when I first started speedrunning, if I could actually get, like, my name up on the actual leaderboard, that would actually make me feel really good about myself. Being one of the best players of Crash 1, the first game I ever played would make me feel really good about myself. And technically, I'm still a really good player in the overall sense. I mean, I'm top 15 in the world in all categories in Crash 1.
Yeah,
that's scheme of things.
That's an accomplishment to take with you, at least. But we've talked a bit about the negative aspects on speedrunning and how it can affect your mental health and that kind of thing. But what if we flip the coin? What's the thing that makes speedrunning fun? What's the thing that drives you to do it? If you want to use the Crash 1 as an example there, how come you didn't give up if it wasn't fun? And does it have to be fun?
I think you don't have to have fun, but I think fun is going to give you a lot more reason to actually keep striving for a better time. Because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then you're not going to actually be able to put in the motivation for it. But the reason why I love playing Crash 1 is obviously my childhood nostalgia. But it's just when you actually do play it right and you actually are having a really good day, you actually can just blaze through the levels and you can feel like you're doing really well. Like, I remember when I got my actual last PB, especially after like a month break, I was like playing exceedingly well. I managed to get like 3 of the 4 skips in the whole run. Because I don't know what happened on that day and everything just fell into place. But after I actually finished, I was so happy with myself. And that gave me the motivation to try and push for a better time. And just be able to go through a level cleanly and smoothly gives you so much joy. Or at least gives me that much joy anyway. I'm not sure how other people would feel about it. But that's what allows me to actually keep doing run after run, is when I actually do play consistently well. That feeling of having another go, having another run, having another run.
A little bit of like adrenaline kick kind of thing.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most difficult thing about speedrunning? And we're looking at all the aspects here, not just the game, but like all the things as preparation and learning things, practicing, like everything that has to do with speedrunning. What is the single most, in fact, like the top 3, if you can, the top 3 most difficult thing for you in speedrunning?
I think the 3 hardest things for me to do when it comes to speedrunning is the time commitment. Is how much time can you actually commit to a game, and how many days a week or maybe even a month you can commit to it. That can be a huge factor for how difficult speedrun can be. Also depend on how long the speedrun is as well, because with Crash 1, any percent, you can finish that in about 50 minutes. So you can get about maybe a good 3 runs in a day, or 4, depending on how long you want to go for. The second hardest thing, I think, is just how much you're committed to actually learning all the skips. Because a lot of the time it isn't just visual based, it's actually just to do with muscle memory. Because sometimes in some skips are more of just timing more than actually skill. Like the Koala Kong skip, for example.
Could you explain it for those who don't know what the skip is?
The Koala Kong skip is the boss on Island 2 in Crash Bandicoot 1, where you have to fight Koala Kong. And you're meant to do it normally by avoiding the boulders and avoiding the TNTs that drop from above you. But there's actually a skip called the Koala Kong skip where you have 30 frames per second. That's how you're supposed to do it. You can do it 60 frames per second, but the timing is so incredibly tight, it's almost impossible to do it, unless you get incredibly lucky. But the Koala Kong skip allows you to get behind the invisible wall, or the actual wall that blocks you from the lava from his side and your side. But if you get the timing correct and you jump into the boulder at the right moment, you can actually clip through the wall behind him and actually hit him for 2 bars of health. So they're only doing it for 1 from a boulder, which allows you to save about a good minute. And that's what defines a lot of the top times, is that skip. Because if you get it right, you can save 30 to a whole minute and a half. You get it wrong, and you're going to be behind by about 40 seconds, which will break a run at that point for high tier play.
Alright, okay.
And that's more about vision. You can actually get it right with timing every single time, but with doing it the correct way, it's more luck more than it is skill, and that can be incredibly frustrating when it comes down to something you can't control. And that can also be a huge factor on you if you continue to actually speedrun it or forget it and just do it the normal way, but you're going to be losing time regardless from that point. And I think the hardest thing about speedrunning is just, I mean, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, it's like how much you enjoy it, because that is, at the end of the day, what will keep you in trying to actually get through for a better time, or you step back and just play it casually. Is just the fun aspect. Because let's be honest, no one wants to play something that they don't enjoy, because that's why we play games. We play it to enjoy it. Same with speedrunning. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, that's going to be the biggest deterrent of you carrying on. I think is just fun, in my eyes anyway. That is.
I completely agree with you. I mean, from a viewer standpoint, I've seen a bunch of speedrunners who they don't seem to be enjoying the game when they're running, but they're mostly like frustrated about like maybe missing out on a skip or getting some bad RNG or something like that, and they get frustrated. But I think deep down they're still enjoying the game, because otherwise they wouldn't be playing it, at least on some level.
Yeah, that's like me with Crash 1. It's like, I love the game, I'll always love Crash 1. It's just trying to do it in a speedrun style, and how much do I want to try and dedicate myself to try and get that one perfect run where everything falls into place. So it comes down to training, but sometimes it can come down to, as people say, RNG. Because no matter how much you practice or train, some games will just come down to, will you get lucky on this one attempt that you need it to, and everything else falls into place. And that's what will make and break people's mentality on trying to keep doing a speedrun that they actually love, or they love to hate, I guess, or hate to love.
Yeah, one of the two at least.
Yeah, indeed.
Right. So my next question is actually quite good, because you've ran the original Crash Bandicoots and you've also ran the remastered version. Do you prefer the original or the remasters, or are there any kind of advantages or disadvantages to the original and the remastered versions?
I mean, yes, there is. I mean, with the original Crash Bandicoots with 1, 2, and 3, I actually found running Crash 1 OG easier than NST, because Crash 1 in NST feels a lot heavier. I mean, when I first played it casually when it first came out, on the very first day it was released, I actually was getting a feel of Crash's controls, and I could tell straight away that Crash, I don't want to say heavier, but obviously they tweaked the controls of how long you can stay in the air for, but it was such a noticeable difference that I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting in certain levels. And yes, I was right when it comes to Road to Nowhere. Because that was the easiest level in the game the High Road, I apologise. Because in the High Road, that's my favourite level, actually, speedrunning in the original Crash 1, but it's my least favourite level now to actually run in NST, if I'm funny enough.
And that has to do with the way that the character handles in the remastered version now?
Yes.
All right.
Because in the original High Road, you could be able to jump over every single gap along the way, turtle or no turtle. But in the NST, even for... because basically, I could quickly explain it, because I can tell that Crash can jump about 3 planks worth in the High Road or Road to Nowhere, which doesn't really make really much difference unless you have to use the turtles. But in the OG speedrun, you can literally just keep moving all the way through, having to worry about having to jump on a turtle to give you extra height and speed, because you can just move that much faster, and Crash just moves that much faster in the air. But when you're moving in the air with Crash, you actually feel a lot heavier and you can't go as far, for example.
Yeah, that does sound like it's like a noticeable difference, at least from a speedrunner's perspective. I'm sure that people playing it casually probably won't notice it unless they're switching back and forth.
No, they wouldn't notice it. No. But also, I mean, there's also pros and cons to both. Like, for example, in Crash 1, for the 100% category, you had to do every level in Crash 1 after the first checkpoint without dying. If you died after the first checkpoint in any level, you'd have to completely restart. But in the NST version, you only have to restart on the coloured gem levels, which can be a massive, a massive breath of fresh air, because I know a lot of people back in playing OG Crash 1 got so annoyed they had to keep restarting constantly if they made one mistake past a checkpoint. But in the NST, you can actually die multiple times on a cleared gem path, but you can't die on a coloured gem path, which gave a lot of people a lot of reassurance that they can actually get the whole game finished. Because I spoke to a lot of people back when I first joined Twitch, when I was watching people, And a lot of people just could not finish Crash 100% because they kept dying on certain levels. And they had to redo it again and again and again, and at some point they said no, they can't do it anymore and gave up, which is a real shame because some got really close, but just one level or two levels was stopping them from finishing it, which is a real shame. But with NST, that problem was taken away, which is really nice.
Maybe there's an off chance, but maybe the developers were watching and like, maybe we should do something about this. I doubt it though, but you never know.
I know. I think when Vicarious Visions actually started making the game, because that's who actually developed made the game, was Vicarious Visions. And it actually had a role in introducing other Crash games, like on the Game Boy Advance. They made Crash's Big Adventure and a few other games for the Game Boy. They took a lot of community feedback, especially I think from the Crash Discord community and also other places. They took a lot of notes from that. So I think they made a lot more, I hate saying casual friendly, but I think I have to in this case. They made it a lot more friendly for casual people. I don't have like the sort of skills that speedrunners have to demolish a level, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, also good points as well for like NST and OG is like in NST you can actually hit any TNT and move straight on, or nitro boxes. Because in the OG version you have to hit every single TNT box and wait for it to explode, but in the NST version you can hit it and move on, because if you were to do an OG, hit TNT and move off screen, it wouldn't explode. That would cause you to miss a box, a level, for example.
Okay. Yeah, that speeds up the process a little bit as well, I suppose.
Also, in certain levels in Crash 2, where you're trying to outrun a boulder, you have to basically wait on screen for the boulder to destroy the nitros, but if you just ran on ahead and you were that far ahead of the boulder, it wouldn't actually, it'd go over the nitros but wouldn't explode them, so that's how you'd miss boxes there. So, I mean, there's pros and cons for both, like, NST and OG, but I think they both do pretty well, considering like Crash was made back in 96, 97, 98 respectively.
Yeah.
They did well for the time, and NST just tweaks it a little bit to make it more friendlier to the everyday gamer.
My next question is gonna seem like it's a little bit off topic, but bear with me, okay? There is a follow-up question to it, but have you ever participated or played any sports, or are you into watching sports of any kind?
I don't really watch sports. I'm not a massive sports fan. I mean, I guess I can technically break out the Final Fantasy X meme of Jex. He never enjoyed watching other people play, I guess.
No.
I was always the one that actually enjoyed playing more than actually watching other people play. But I used to play, back when I was in primary school, a lot of football. Because I don't know why, but I was just naturally drawn to being a goalkeeper. I don't know why, but that's just what I felt most comfortable playing. I'm not sure if it's because I was just that lazy. I just want to stay in goal in one spot.
Or Xuio saves the day.
Yes. Or that thrill of being able to like save the ball and like keep our team in the game, I guess, for a better pun.
Yeah. How long did you play?
I think I played for like a good 3 years in the primary school team. In that sense, and I even have a bit of an embarrassing story. It's like usually when I was playing football, especially when I was in goal, I would be doing a lot of like the moves that Crash would be doing, like his animations. Like, for example, when he has like his arms by his side, he literally like looks to his left, looks to his right. I'd look like, what's that kid doing? I'm in my own little world going do 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 do, looking left and right, and people thinking, what's wrong with that kid? But no, I just like daydream a lot of the time. But no, I usually love to play in the goal, but I'd also daydream a lot of me playing games when I get home as well. But that was my primary school days of playing sports. When I went into middle school, that was a bit different.
Did you quit completely, or did you continue?
I didn't really quit. It's got to the end of primary school, and then, because usually I loved doing PE, that was my favourite subject, doing sports. I never really committed to one thing. It was more just my love was always games, and I liked doing sports, but I guess at the end of the day I was only doing PE when I was actually there and just loving doing sports, but I never really made it a dream of mine to be like a professional player.
You just enjoy playing it for the time being.
Yeah. I didn't hate playing football. I loved playing football. I just didn't actually see it as more of like a hobby, or more than a hobby. It was just, while I was there, I just loved playing the actual sports with everyone.
So the reason I asked about the sport thing is because speedrunning is becoming more and more competitive. It's getting more picked up as well, and it has been over the year. There are events and such for it, but it's also, some people are starting to consider speedrunning a form of esports. I know DreamHack, for example, who are known to putting on big LAN parties and big esports tournament. They're actually adding speedrunning as a section there now as well. How do you think speedrunning compares to the likes of, well, sports in general, like football or hockey or cricket, and even esports? Do you think it could be classified as a legit esport, or is it a separate thing?
That's a really good question, actually. I've thought about it before, but never really in much depth. But I think if everything's in the right place with the right games and the right people, I think it could be really entertaining to watch. Because if you have like two people with similar skills side by side, I mean, I've seen quite a few community streams of doing that just in general races. And you see like, and there's one person I was watching, or two people I was watching, doing a Crash 2 run last year. And I think there was like a second and a half between them at the very end. Came down to literally the wire. And it came down to one person not getting like the last hit on Cortex properly before going actually past the boulder. Past the asteroid, and that cost them the race. And it was literally came down to like second and a half, but it was thrilling stuff to watch from start to finish. Them being that close.
A second and a half. That's a race. That's a race when it's even.
And if it came down to that in a proper like esports like scene with like 10,000 people watching and watching it that closely, I think it could be a real. For example, that could be a real good way to actually attract attention to it, for example.
Yeah.
Because they were like, I get quite far ahead and would pull back a little bit from a couple of input mistakes, but overall that was thrilling to watch. It was like a proper like, it was like watching like Counter-Strike, or for example, like a proper esports tournament, Counter-Strike. It was like watching like every movement mattered, and like the slightest moment would actually change the whole thing. So I think it could, in the right circumstance, actually be as popular as normal esports.
Yeah, maybe one day. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But you mentioned the races there, and I know part of the answer here already, but I've still written it down, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Mm-hmm. But have you partaken in any races, and which ones? And was it for something special or just a bit of fun?
I've done a couple of races with a couple of people.
Me being one of them.
Yeah, with you being one of them. Hey, see?
Yeah.
But no, I've done a couple of races with you. I've done a couple of races with Cloudy Final. Also a couple of people called Killer Seth as well. I've done a couple of races with him, but it's more about just more of a friendly thing, really. I've never actually done like a proper race in like a when it gets like half the bits of the whole show, for example, which I know like some people do, like Spike Vegeta, do like half of the bits that he actually got from that stream go to the winner. But I've never been in like a proper race. It's more been like a casual, friendly race, more than actually like a prize. For example, like a prize race.
Yeah, I'm with you for that one. Like when I ask you if you want to do a Final Fantasy 9 race, for example, it's always for the spirit of fun. Like there's no it for me it relieves the thought of having to PB. PB is a plus, but it's more about having fun, having someone to talk to, and if you're getting a brain fart, it's like, what was the menu here? You can ask. You have someone to ask and get an immediate response. So it's more, for me, the races I've done, they've been more of having fun / practice and learning experience, really, more than anything.
Yes.
Nothing competitive, really. The only competitive I personally have done is when I raced Xuio007 and Jade Cocoon a few years back. But even then, even though we were both going for the world record, it was still in the spirit of fun. We were having fun doing it. We were helping each other with strats and that kind of thing. So it didn't feel like, oh, it's on, you're dead, that kind of thing. Yeah. It was more of a, all right, good luck on you. I hope you get world record, or I hope I get world record, or someone's gonna get world record. End of the day.
I mean, it's one of those things like, I mean, there's always going to be good people and bad people in those situations. Like, when I was watching, like, a couple of weeks ago, this compilation of, like, people at Smash tournaments. I mean, I hate to use Smash as an example, but it's probably one of the more well-rounded, well-known things of good / bad sportsmanship. Of literally people, the moment they know they've lost, they completely, like, throw their controller on the ground or, like, threaten to hit someone. I mean, he even got to one point where someone actually even punched the actual person because they actually won. He didn't do anything. He literally just lost, and all of a sudden just punched him because he lost.
What? All right, that's a bit too far. But I mean, in that sense, I'd say it's a little bit different than a speedrunning race. Just in the sense that esports in general is a very competitive scene, especially when you have all the players near each other. But the fighting scene, the fighting game scene specifically, is even more competitive, because it seems to me they're encouraging smack talking, and when you're smack talking, even though it's in the spirit of fun, sometimes people will take it personally on one level, and that will heighten, spike your emotions, and unfortunately sometimes people will just throw a punch in your face if you're being an asshole.
I mean, I can see the reason why they do it, but it doesn't give them the right to do it, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely,
because...
I agree. I'm just saying that there's a higher chance of it happening at a fighting game competition than there is at a, for example, Dota 2 or CSGO event.
Yeah, because also with those esports teams, they're under contracts as well, because it's not like someone who's just like their own person goes to a fighting tournament and goes to try and win the cash prize. It doesn't really care it's only their public image. But when they're actually like a professional esports team, they're being represented by their sponsors. They have to hold themselves up to a certain degree of professionalism.
Oh, but so does some of the fighters as well. They have personal sponsors they have to live up to.
Yeah.
Because if you compare it to, take for example the StarCraft 2 scene, that's a one-on-one heavy scene, and they're usually part of teams who have sponsors. Some players even have personal sponsors on top of that as well. So because of that, as part of the reason, like if they are frustrated or anything, they'll take it out when the cameras are away. Now, there's been plenty of cases that will prove my statement wrong as well, but there's always an odd one out in everything.
There's always going to be one.
Yeah, or several.
But yes, because I can see why they get so angry when they lose, because they put so much time and dedication, like me with Crash. But with me, it's my own fault. It's my own fault. I failed that run. But for people that go into like fighting tournaments, it's like they just had to have a bad day, or it's just like they didn't put as much effort, or seem like they didn't put as much effort or time, and like they lose, and that's it. They're out of the tournament. All that time they spent trying to get to that point, it's over.
Yeah.
So I can see why they get angry, but just because you get angry doesn't give you the right to lash out on other people. If I was invited to a fighting tournament, for example, I know I'm not very good, but if I were to lose, I would take it on the chin like, nah. But that was for me, I haven't put the time in, so I haven't got the right to be angry, but I would just take it on the chin, shake the person's hand, well done, and then move on. But
yeah,
a lot of people can't seem to do that in the fighting tournament scene. Some people can, a lot of people can, but there's about a good chunk of people that can't just take it on the chin and just walk away.
Yeah, people react differently depending on what state of emotion they're in as well. It's like the people who go, I don't know if you have it in the UK, but in Sweden we have, like, you can buy lottery tickets that are scratch off, and if you get a certain number you go on TV and you get to do the same thing again, but it's a guaranteed win. And you either win like a fixed sum of 25,000 or 5 million.
Really?
It's one or the, it's like what those, and then several steps in between. And it's the same thing there, like someone's scratching off and it's like, oh, they got 2 5 millions, they need 3 to get the win, and then they just win the like 50 instead. The announcers are like, yeah, you just won 50,000, but obviously the person standing there's like, yeah, but it's not 5 million. And you can tell the frustration, but they're holding it back, like, yeah, so what are you gonna do with the money? Oh, I don't know, I'm gonna go drink myself to death now because
I didn't win 5 million.
Yeah, but I guess it's the same kind of frustration. Like, you worked up to it, you get to the finals of a tournament, even though you win a prize pool, you didn't win the biggest one. And it's still like, it could be, this could be like dissected into so many things, like the human psychology, like, oh, we should be happy with what we have, we shouldn't be greedy. But at the end of the day, you're a part of a tournament to win the prize money, the biggest pool. And if you don't, you're going to be upset. Then in hindsight, you might realize that, oh, but I still get paid, so it's all good.
I mean, I can see why they're frustrated, but imagine getting to like the top 8. I mean, you're top 8 in that tournament out of like thousands of people that might have, like, for example, like the Smash tournament, like the Open Smash tournament, I think was something like 1 million people, something like that, close to 1 million people actually registered for the actual tournament and had to actually go to official buildings across the world, whatever it was, like official centres.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of people got knocked out in the first couple of rounds, but the big people got to the final 16 and then people got to the final 8. You think, You're the top 10 players in the world, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you be frustrated with that? That's like, for example, if me and like the top 20 people of Crash in the world got together and literally first person to finish is the world's best player.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily true because you must have had a bad day. I mean, I've beaten some really good people generally, even if I has had a bad day, just because I just pushed through when they couldn't push through or just had too much bad luck and just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because you actually fail doesn't mean you're not worth anything. It's just people can't seem to, at the moment, it's just their frustration just comes too much. Like sometimes when I was doing FF9 a couple of years ago, I don't even know if you can even remember it, Snow Penguins, but one time I was doing FF9, I knew the run was dead after after disc 1. I had like a 240 disc 1.
Yeah.
Which is a really, actually, no, it's a really bad time. Even on emulator, it's a really bad time.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but
Yeah.
that's a pretty bad time, yeah.
But I kept going, and I was positive all the way up until almost after getting everyone back together after Kucha's Palace, and I got to I'm so sorry that I had a brain fub. What's the name of the place after you get to the beach on the Snow Plaza? Estogaza. That was it. Sorry, Estogaza. And I was trying to be happy and cheerful for like 5 hours after I knew the run was already dead. So imagine how I felt after when literally, because I had like miss, back attack, miss for the majority of the run. And then I got to like my third fight with the Red Dragons, and then I needed Vivi to die, but Freya missed, and then I had to like wait for I had to try to attack with I couldn't remember what I did at the moment, but I had to wait for Freya or someone to attack Vivi, but then they got off another wind slash, and that was it. They killed everyone. I literally just paused the game and I just broke down in tears.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for it. I didn't get angry. I was just so like, I was trying to be positive and happy for 5 hours after I knew the run was already dead, and after the run was getting worse and worse and worse, and I was still trying to be happy. But at that moment, I was like, I can't. I just broke down in tears and ended the stream. I felt so bad afterwards, but it was better than like me being angry and like throwing something. I was just like, I was trying to be happy for so long. I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I know. Like, there comes a point when you just like, you can't take it anymore. I remember I've had a similar run of Final Fantasy IX as well. The whole run, it started off like the first 3 splits. I was in the green. We were saving time. It was all Gucci. But then it was the gradual descent into madness, as I kept losing more and more and more time. And I think I was it like 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Could have been 30, I don't know. It was a lot of time behind, but I just kept pushing on. And I was like, oh my god, I just want something to kill me so I can end it, because I didn't want to quit. And then I get to, I think it was end of disc 3 or disc 4, and I somehow managed to save so much time. I still wasn't ahead, and then I get to the last 3 bosses. I get the perfect death guys, I get an amazing Kuja, and I get a decent Necron, and I managed to PB by like, I think it was like 30 seconds or something. And at the end of the day, it was like, well, I PB'd, but I'm not going to submit this because this was one of the most garbage things I've ever done, and I don't want this PB to be stapled on my head. So I don't think I submitted it, because it was just, the whole run was it was 10 hours of torture for a 30-second PB. It just, no, it wasn't worth it.
Not going down that route.
But I did it at least, and it was like, oh, everyone watching was very kind about it, but I was super frustrated. I didn't want to PB, because I felt like if I PB'd, I have to submit it. But then I thought about it, and I was like, I'm not gonna submit it. I think, excuse me, I think like after a day or 2, I reconsidered and submitted it anyway. Because a PB is a PB, but you know what you're gonna do. Right, so, we've mentioned a lot, we've talked a lot about Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3, but you also speedrun Kingdom Hearts series, Sam, and we've touched a little bit on Final Fantasy 9. But you also do, or have done in the past, at least some other Final Fantasy. But out of these games, could you like briefly, we don't have to go into too much details, but are there any different categories? Well, there are different categories for each game, but are there any that stick out that you think is more fun than others? And do you think any of the categories in each of these games, do you consider the main competitive category to be misplaced? That it's not the true one? It's controversial, but...
yes. I mean, briefly going through Kingdom Hearts, I mean, that's probably going to be the biggest kettle of fish. I mean, there's something like 5 different, you've got 4 different difficulty settings. You've got beginner, you've got standard, you've got proud, you've got critical, and then in those difficulties, you've got like 15, 16 different categories in that alone.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, you've got any %, you've got 100, you've got the full, like, Jimmy Journal completion. That's a whole 100% Jimmy Journal completion. Actually, no, sorry, no, that's 3 different things. You've got any Jimmy Journal %, which is basically just have to max out Jimmy's journal, and it's 100%, which doesn't only include that, but other things outside of the journal, like having to do certain things, like having to do all the fights in the Radiant Garden secret area, having to do all that, and that's just only 3 of like another 4 I could even mention, but I won't go into that. And so you got like 18, like 20 different like 67 different categories from all different difficulties combined, for example, just in Kingdom Hearts 2 alone. But for me, I think my personal opinion, I mean, there's any % and there's the 100% category or maximum %, depending on what you're playing, because certain games have different maximum percentages. But for me, I prefer to do the whole game if I can, because you're literally doing everything. That's my preferred category, even if some of them do run quite long. Like, especially when I did like last month, I think it was like December something, I did like the Crash Bandicoot 315% speedrun, doing Crash Bandicoot 1, 2 and 3, 105% for Crash 1, 102% for Crash 2 and 108 for Crash 3.
That alone is a crazy concept to me, that you can go beyond 100%, because it kind of defines the purpose of 100% if you can go beyond it, because anything beyond that's in a game, then that's not 100%. I mean,
we could probably make an entire podcast on that discussion alone. Just that.
Let's just leave that topic for now. Then.
Yeah.
But going back to Kingdom Hearts, you mentioned there are a bunch of categories there, and in general, for most games, at least, I want to be as bold as to say is 99% of all the games that are being speedrun, any percent is just the most competitive one in most of the games. Is this the same way for Kingdom Hearts, or is there different versions of any % that are more or less competitive than just the any %?
I mean, there is quite a lot of different categories, but I think actually the main category for most people is any %, and there's also a one second, I can't actually remember the full name for it, so I got to actually refer to the thing very quickly. That was it. Yes, there's the Data Organization RTA and Cabinet of Remembrance RTA Level 1. Those actually are the main, but basically it's a rush of bosses. The 13 members of the organisation is one of the main categories, actually considering everything.
Oh, really? So it's not really going through like from new game finishing the story. It's another subcategory that's the main competitive category.
Surprisingly, it is for Kingdom Hearts 2, because there's literally, you got to do 13 boss fights really cleanly as fast as you can. And if I can put up the time very quick for level 1, I think that's the most competitive. With 8 people, I mean, there's actually only a second between second place and third place, for example, and that's literally doing all 13 fights in 4.5 minutes, pretty much.
That's very, very interesting, though. I mean,
because you're allowed to make a save file in the actual the hall itself, and time starts the moment you actually activate the first boss battle loading screen.
Yeah, that's very interesting, though. That just the concept of any % not being the main competitive
main category.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. For Kingdom Hearts now, and I see like most of the or all of the top. Let's see here. In fact, every single run, the most recent run on the main category is from 3 years ago.
Yeah,
that's the most recent one. That's insane for any %. I mean, that's on beginner, but looking at standard, it's also 3 to 4 years. Proud 3, 6, and 4 years. And that's just the any % one. That's very interesting.
And considering how popular Kingdom Hearts actually is, or what Kingdom Hearts 2 is overall, I mean, most people will say, what's one of your favourite games from the PS2? And a lot of people will say Kingdom Hearts, a lot of people, or at least in the top 5 games will be Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah.
But that's really, I mean, there's any %, I mean, there's so many different categories, you can see it right there, but the main ones for Kingdom Hearts 2 alone is, I think it's any % and also the Cabinet of Remembrance %. Those are the main 2.
I can tell there are even categories for depending on what version of PlayStation you have, which is also very, very fascinating. But as you mentioned, we could probably do a whole other podcast just diving into that.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned who the first speedrun you watched. You mentioned why and how you got into speedrunning. But overall, this whole period of time, over these years when you've watched speedruns and you've done speedruns yourself, what is the single most impressive speedrun you have ever seen?
Oh dear!
Yeah, it's a hard one. But if you got one right on the top of your head.
I think if I actually remember, if I go through my memory, I remember someone playing Doom. That's probably one of the most standout ones for me. I guess that's probably not the best one I can think of off the top of my head, but what comes to my mind straight away is that when I was watching the Doom 2016, this guy basically leaving the very first lift after the tutorial level, and this guy literally just like, I was like, what's this guy doing? He's looking at a rock with his pistol. I was like watching for like 10 seconds, watching him get it, and then all of a sudden he just like does something and it goes flying across the whole map towards the end of the level in like 10 seconds. I was like, okay.
That's a thing?
Yeah, apparently that is a thing. And obviously me watching and thinking, oh, I wonder if I can do that. Couldn't do it at all. I literally had no idea what he did to even try and replicate it.
Almost sounds like the way... Like, I don't know if you've seen a GoldenEye speedrun for the Nintendo 64.
I've seen a few people on YouTube do things on it.
But basically that, in every video, they're not even looking forwards. They're looking straight down. They've memorized the path. They know exactly what to do, and it's down to like the millisecond and everything. That, to me, is just incredibly impressive. That they have that kind of muscle memory to pull that stuff off. That's just... I would never be able to do that.
That comes from literally having to like blindfold yourself pretty much and just like literally in your mind to like go hold up here for about 2 seconds and then hold left, press A there.
Yeah.
Turn round, turn the stick like 45 degrees, carry on, etc.
Exactly.
Like how much you have to do to try and remember all of that from start to finish. I mean, it's not overly long, but from having to start to finish, 1 minute and 10 seconds is a lot of... about 1 minute and 13, because I think the world record's like 1 minute and 12 or something like that, so 1 minute 15, for example, of pure muscle memory. Obviously, you are seeing what you're doing as well, but at that point, you're literally just moving on muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so we're gonna head into the last question before we round things off. We've touched a little bit on this topic already, but I'm gonna give you a chance to deep dive if you want to, or just share something different. But if you could give any piece of advice to anyone starting out who wants to give speedrunning a try, what advice would that be?
I think if you want to start speedrunning, you have to know from the start if you want to play it for fun, you want to be competitive, or somewhere in between. That's where you have to first define which game you're going to be playing and how far do you want to take it before you even start, because that's going to be a huge indicator of how far you want to take it. For example, with me, just say I'm playing Serious Sam casually, for example, that's more of a sort of a funny thing because not many people actually really play Serious Sam, so it's not really a competitive category. So it's more of a tongue-in-cheek, more of a laugh more than anything else. But if you want to do something like quite serious, like for example Super Mario 64, and you want to actually become competitive, like how much time do you want to put into doing it? And if you feel like it's going to be too much, then just don't do it, because you can try and do it, but if you try and push too hard, you might feel like I did and get burnt out after a while, and you have to take a long break and then consider if you want to try and do it again or just take a different approach. So I think the best thing you really can do is knowing what you want to do first. Either do it competitively, do it casually for fun of it while trying to be entertaining, or a little bit of both. But I think the best thing is just know what you're going to be doing from the start, because that will save you a lot of, I guess, emotional stress and physical trauma, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, save you some heartache.
Yes.
All right, so before we finish off, we're gonna do 3 quick questions. You're gonna answer them as quickly as you can. There's only 3 of them.
Okay.
As quickly as you can, and you're not allowed to give more than 3 seconds of thought. You just have to answer on top of your head.
Quickfire round!
Yeah, kind of, but it's only 3 questions. This list will probably expand as the podcast goes on. But first question, top 3 pizza toppings, go.
Chicken, pepperoni, and cheese.
Alright. Question number 2. If you had to speedrun only one game for the rest of your life, which game would it be and why?
King Hearts 2, because that game I've put in almost as much time as Crash Bandicoot 1, but with King Hearts 2, the combat is just so fun for me. I could probably do that and just do like a boss rush or the whole game for a very long period of time.
Alright, and the final question. If you were trapped on a desert island that had modern day housing with electricity, plumbing, a bed, a kitchen, a computer, and internet, what one item would you bring?
An infinite bag of fudge.
An infinite bag of fudge. That's a great.
Because I can just knock them on that all day long while playing games.
Yeah. Infinite bag. I thought it would be Skittles, to be honest.
I love Skittles, but I'd probably rot away my teeth pretty quickly. At least with fudge, it probably wouldn't do that so quickly.
True, not as quickly, but eventually.
Yes.
Alright, Xuio, is there anything you would like to say to those listening? A promo or anything at all? The floor is yours.
Yeah, guys, if you actually want to watch me do speedruns, casual games, I'm going to try and see if I can get into doing more speedruns this year. I'm going to try and do like Final Fantasy 8 and 10, and maybe even try and get back into FF9 runs this year. King Hearts 2 runs, I want to try to see if I can try and do the full Jimmy General completion, start learning that very shortly. Or just in general, me playing games and acting like a fool. You can come watch me at twitch.tv/Xuio007. And you can come join in the crazy antics. Hopefully we'll have a good time.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you, Xuio, for being on the show and the very first episode of the Speedrunner podcast. I've been Sir Penguin. You've been watching or listening to, or maybe both, the Speedrunner podcast. Enter quirky and fun outro catchphrase here. Goodbye.